Hi Grinder School, this is Uboat, and what I did yesterday was I played two tables of 25 PLO and played about, I think I had played about maybe 200 to 400 hands. And what I did was I select a couple of hands that kind of shows you, how to approach a little bit higher stakes, basically 25 to maybe 50 PLO. And what we have to be aware is, although the players are not as bad as 2, 5, and 10 PLO, and players at 25 PLO, they do tend to make certain decent folds, and they're a little bit more aware of the type of the strength of hand that they hold. So being aware of that, especially when we're in position, we want to take advantage of any tells that these players give off, like any weak size bets. And let's start with this replayer, and we'll kind of go hand by hand and see what kind of general tendencies that these players will have at 25 PLO. So in the first hand, we have a 6-9 Jack Queen double suited on the button, and the important thing to know is that we are on the button, so we will open up a lot more loose compared to at early positions. And remember, at early positions, we want to really tighten up, whereas in the late position, we want to really open up our hand range. Okay. So on this first hand, the cutoff raises 2.5, which is kind of rare to see at the stakes. You normally see these 2.5 or 2x raises from late positions at 50 and 100 PLO. And so since we are in position, and we do have a decent hand in position, a very high chance of hitting the flop very hard with our 9 Jack Queen double suited, and 6 is an angle, so we're going to disregard that card. So we're going to definitely make a call in position. And we hit a decent flop. We hit a gutter with a third-knighted flush draw, and if the cutoff makes any bet, we will definitely not be folding to any bet, even a pot-sized bet on the flop. And if he checks to us, we're going to definitely lead out. And you know what? When you look at this flop, it's not really that wet, so I would usually bet like half pot. And if he calls, I mean, we'll see what happens on the turn. Because if he calls, I mean, we have a lot of potential to improve on the turn. So we make, well, a little bit less than half pot size bet, and our cutoff calls. And now we hit the flush. And just to be aware that we have, the queen high flush, and there's a potential that the cutoff could have the king high flush, but and when he makes a bet, we're definitely not folding our hand to that bet, okay? It's a weak size bet, and anyone who has king high flush is going to bet close to pot size bet. So we call, and we'll see what he does. And if he made a pot size bet on the river, it would have been an easy fold. And since he checks back, it's okay to check back or make a bet, maybe close to $5. And we check back. And I think we could have got value if you bet $5 on that. And he basically, didn't really have anything. So there you go. So it gives you a first example of how these players are playing at 25 PLO. So let's go to the next hand. So we are again in position, and you'll find that most of my hands that I replay, I'm in position because I rarely play junky hands out of position. Whereas in position, I mean, I have like 7, ace, king, jack. I mean, it's double suited, suited to the ace, and the other one suited to the king. However, the 7 is a dangler, and jack is kind of a gappy too, so it's not a very strong hand. I would never play this hand at early position, but at the button, it's definitely a hand that's worth calling, and never 3-betting on this one, unless we have a habitual folder who who folds 3 bets. So again, we have a cutoff who raises 3x. And mind you, like I know I have these HUD stats up on the replayer, but when I'm playing in-game, especially Zoom, I don't have these HUD stats, so I'm kind of playing blind and just basing it on my past experience of playing 25 PLO. And so let's see what happens. So what we do is, this is very common with whether we're playing 25 PLO, 2 PLO, 5 PLO, or even 50 PLO, even sometimes 100 PLO. We're going to get multicolor seeing the flop. But however, as you move up stakes, especially when I'm in position with double suited cards such as I have, it's probably better to make a 3-bet. But at these lower stakes, it's better to just call, because everyone's going to just, even if you make a 3-bet, everyone's going to just call to see the flop, and we're going to have it playing for massive pot size flops. And if you don't hit the flop, it's just wasting money. So it's better to just call, avoid making any 3-bets, even if you're in position, and just see the flop cheap. Okay, and we hit a decent flop. We hit top pair, we hit a gutter, and we have a backdoor flush draw. And this is a hand that will never fold, especially against the blinds who are kind of weirdly stacked. And even at versus the cutoff, because we do have positions. So small blind checks, and the big blind bets half size pot. And that's kind of a mistake, because when we have like 8 queen king, that's kind of wettish, semi-wet board. Someone will definitely call if they have 9 10, or cards like mine, and that's definitely a bad size bet on this flop. A more appropriate size would be something like 225 or even 250 to make people fold out, or even pot size bet, but we rarely see that these days. So we make a call, and we're going to see what he has, because what we're doing is he's very short stacked. He's less than 50 BB, and we're going to try to get a stack. And that definitely improves our hand. So now we have a flush draw, a gutter, and we do have top pair. And we'll see what he does. And we're definitely not folding to that bet. And then now we hit trips. And what we're going to do is, if he checks back or if he bets, we're going to just raise and get his stacks. And yeah. Oh, you know what? I think I missed value on that one. I would have definitely raised that, because he's short stacked. I mean, he only has 453 left. I think this was a mistake on my part. I should have definitely re-raised his bet. And what do we have? Yeah, and he had the queen high flush, whereas I had the nuts. Oh, sorry, not the nuts. He was on a flush draw and also middle pair, 2 pair, and we should definitely raise that hand for sure. So, mistake on my part on that hand by not re-raising the flop when I hit the trip of kings. Remember, when players call down, like on that previous hand, let's go back, where he called down with 2 pairs. Let's see, yeah, he called down with 2 pairs, and that's still common at 25 PLO. So, if you make any 2 pairs or better, definitely like trips or sets or straights or boats, make sure you re-raise for value, and I'm sure he would have called if I re-raised on the river. Okay, so next hand, I'm in the big blind. I have a very trashy hand, and let's see what I do. So everyone folds, so it's going to be a blind versus blind, I guess. So here's one really important thing to note. When I'm in the big blind and someone raises from the small blind, I will be rarely folding, because I am playing in position and we're heads up. And it's a totally different game, and then you can definitely call it when you get used to it, and when you get used to your starting hands and seeing what hands appropriate a certain position, you'll realize that when you're in position, when your head's up, position is everything. And I do have suited kings here, and I have a king queen that could hit a straight draw. So let's see the flop, and we do hit 2 pairs. And this is not the type of flop that I'm going to play slow against, especially playing heads up. So when he checks back, I'm going to bet. No, it's a dry board, so no, usually half size bet, or maybe 2/3. It's okay. And this is interesting, he raises a full pot. And what we have to think to ourselves is this: what kind of hand is he going to raise us full pot, especially small blind against small blind, where there's a lot of, I don't know, a lot of people who play no limit tend to not let go of their small blinds very easily, and they just bloat the pot and just lose their stack. So I do have top bottom pair, and what I'm thinking is I really doubt he has kings, because if he had kings, I I really don't think he would have checked back on this flop and then made me lead out and then check raise it. Especially when there's a flush draw. So what I thought he had was he was on a flush draw. He had maybe like I don't know, maybe a possible nutted flush draw, and he was trying to fold me out. So and at d6, I'm not going to be folding my top bottom pair, especially blind versus blind and in position. So I call, and we hit our dream card on the turn, and we hit the boat. It's two fulls of kings, and we are not going to fold, and we will try to get a stack. So he bets, and we get our stack in, and he calls. And the reason why when I was playing, the reason why these players, they will not fold when they have the nut flush draw, and that's the reason why I put it all in. And he did have the nut flush draw, and he hit his nut on the river, and thankfully we had the boat. Okay, so that was a very big pot. So next hand. So something to be aware of this hand is when there is a flush draw on the flop and you do hit something better than something that's two pairs and you're blind versus blind, it's very likely that they have the nut flush draw or maybe the non-nut flush draw, and I really doubt, especially blind versus blind, that they're going to be raising. They'll be checking the flop, especially when they're out of position. If they have top set, if they have set or any kind of set, top set, middle set, bottom set, they're going to lead out when they're out of position, and they're going to try to take the pot down. So that's one thing to take note of, that if there's a flush draw, put them, and if they re-raise your, bet on the flop and they re-raise you, put them on a flush draw, and if you hit, and if the flush draw doesn't complete, just keep betting for value. Or if you're lucky enough to hit the boat or the straight, just bet, and you'll get their stacks. Next one, we do have single suited ace. The fours suck. I mean, those fours don't do anything for our hands. It's almost like pointless. So all I'm looking at is my aces and my suited ace. And we do have relative position at the cutoff as long as the button folds, and he has us covered that, so we have to take note of that. So if you're heads up against the button who has us covered and we are over 250 big blinds deep, we're going to be watching our SPR, and we're going to only get it in when we have a massive hand. Okay. And remember, and also after 11 hands, I know I didn't see this while I was playing, but since we have the HUD, he does have fishy stats. I know it's only 11 hands, but that tells us quite a bit. 73-45, and let's see what happens. So the middle position raises pot, and we're not going to re-raise. We want to get as many people in this pot right now, and especially when you hit the flop, so that we can bet big. So we have, we're a multi-way 5 ways. We hit a decent flop again. We hit a gutter with a nut flush draw, and it's the hand that we're not going to fold no matter what. So everyone checks, and we're gonna call this bet. We're not gonna re-raise. We're gonna try to get a lot of people, especially that deep stack, into the pot, especially if he hits the nuts. And 5. Well, how does this change our hand? The 5 on the turn. Well, it doesn't really change our hand at all. The only thing we have to be wary is the short stack has less than barely a pot size left. So we're definitely not going to make any initiative because we don't want to get our, well, actually, we do want to get our stacks in against the short stack because we do have ace, and I think we're ahead of his range. And he did make a weak pot size bet, well, not pot, less than pot size bet on the flop. But the only thing what we have to be aware of is our deep stack, because he has us covered, and if he has like queen 5 or queen 3, he does have us. And so let's see what happens. So he checks back, and we check back, and deep stack bets, barely 1/3, and that's no reason to fold. So we're gonna call, and then now we have a king. So it's a difficult spot, and only thing that we do need to be afraid of is like a king five or a queen five or even a 3-5. So when he checks back, we're going to just check back, and we should take the pot down. Okay. Okay, we're still at the cutoff. We have, it's like it's a marginal hand. It's like 9-8, 4-5. We have a gap of 6-7. The only reason why I would call with this hand or even open up with hand is we do have a chance of hitting a 20 combo wrap. And we do have relative position. So let's see how this hand plays out. Let's forget this hand. So he limps, so we're going to call the limp. We're not going to, this is not a hand that we want to 3-bet. And when this player raises the $1.25, it's not a really strong bet. It's just, I think he's just raising to isolate, to play a heads up against someone. And he must be, and this kind of move always happens with players who are just transiting from no limit. In pot limit, if you want to raise for any reason, or the only reason to raise is for value, and not to raise just to isolate and play heads up against someone, because this person would be making a mistake because he's in the big blind, and he would be out of position if me or the cutoff called. So it's really a big mistake to just raise like this, multi-way against, actually multi-way out of position, because I really doubt he's going to be playing heads up against a small blind. And because in pot limit, I mean, blind versus blind doesn't happen that much unless you have a confident player who's playing the big blind, and he knows that the previous players have folded out. Gee, I hope I made sense on that one. Sorry, guys. So let's kind of play this hand out, and I'll just shut up. So we're going to see the flop three ways. We hit a open-handed flush draw, and let's see what everyone bets, and everyone small blind checks, big blind bets 225, which is barely half pot. And we're not going to fold to this one because we do have an open-ended flush draw. Open-ended straight draw. And he folds. Now 3/4. And then what we got to do is this. He raised from the big blind, and he bet the flop with Jack 3-10, and now it's a semi-wet board, and he bet barely half pot. And I'm thinking maybe he might have ace-ace XX or maybe king-king XX. And let's see what he does. And he checks back on the turn, which means that he is not confident about his hand. So we check back too, because we can definitely improve our hand. Now, what does a 3 do? Well, basically nothing. It kind of gives us the advantage because now we are playing in position, and when we're in position, we do play a lot loose, and we could hit trips or maybe 3-4 and hit the boat. So when he checks back, we should bet pretty big, and we bet 675, which is a pretty decent sized bet, definitely a bet for value, and he folds. So definitely one of the good times to play in position and call and see what the opponent does and what kind of weakness he shows, and we take advantage of that in position. Next hand, we're in the big blind. We have decent hand. I mean, it's 8, 10, deuce, 9. The 8, 9, 10 works really well. It hits the flop really well. The deuce is really useless. It's a dangler, and it is suited to we do have a suited card to the 10, which is not that great, but we'll take it, especially when we play heads up, and that's what we're trying to play. So the button raises 3x, and looking at that one, let's kind of take a look. He hasn't played very many hands, and he only raised in the blinds and the button and middle position. And if the small blind folds, like he did right there, we will definitely be calling. And we do have a decent hand to hit the flop hard. And we do hit the flop. We do hit the flop fairly hard. We hit an open-ended flush draw again, but no backdoor, and a backdoor flush draw. So we definite equity to call any bet made by button. And he bets less than half size pot size bet. So we'll definitely call. We're not going to fold, and we'll see what action he takes. And when we hit trips, I'm going to lead out on this one and try to take the pot down. And he calls. And when he hits 7, we have the trips and also made straight. And we're definitely not going to slow down on this. And we got to bet something close to $5 to $6, and we get a fold out of him. Okay. Okay, now we are in middle position. We kind of have semi-trashy aces, suited to the ace, but the deuce does nothing for us, and we are kind of out of position. And we have a less than fully stacked player at early position, and we're going to definitely call. We're not going to 3-bet from middle position. And the interesting thing here is the short stacker or less than 50 BB player pots us. And when the other less than full stack player calls a spot, this is a perfect chance to go all in and get their stacks in. So we make a pot size bet, and they all call, and we'll call the remaining stack, and we just let the thing roll out, and that's how we win the pot against the short stacks. So never be, especially when you have aces and you do have kind of relative position against them, no, don't slow down, just get their stacks. Okay, and that concludes this video. I hope you guys took something from this video of playing 25 PLO. I did mumble a little bit, so sorry about that. And I'll see you guys again. This is Uboat signing off for Grinder School.